priority that will be elevated. Not to have a better web presence for people who are blind, especially. And I want we're working past that. I'd like to have information so that people go to the website. Here's how to contact tenancy.
Yeah.
Kind of things that
Usually happen. Yeah, nice. Yeah.
because we want to make it. Qualified.
Right. First thing is.
I don't know how much time it gets. There are other sources.
Yeah, it shows an office.
Opportunities. I'm trying to get. So it used to be the save some. Build some equity and then use it to buy, whether it's the unit that we're in or something that we have. There aren't any grant funds yet that we either go around that. They're either sort of rentals or homeowners. And this is what
Understand the Sam's Club says they. What's the question? Sam's Club Synchrony Bank. That's the credit card service for retail cards. Through Sam's Club. Yes.
for rentals and ownership. I don't know how it would be.
It will be on the screen.
Oh, I think so.
If it's cash, I get everybody a copy of the agenda.
I have one.
Okay, thank you.
From the meeting I was at. I'd like the people to be. So. Unless they came from a separate.
Well, I send your praises every year.
Send you a copy.
Right, the second.
At this point, I think, yeah. At this point, I know a lot more.
I got, it's gonna be here in about.
All right, if I could make sure everybody's mics are turned on, then I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and if we can stand for the pledge, followed by homeless outs. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Commissioner Walter.
Here.
Commissioner Bunnick.
Present.
Commissioner Wessel.
Here.
Commissioner Campbell.
Here and present.
Commissioner Alguier. Chairman Yoder.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Next up, we have approval of board minutes, which I believe we have 3 sets to approve tonight. Chance to review, I'll take a motion. Money?
I move to approve a budget work session from Tuesday, July 14th, 2026. The regular session Tuesday, July 21st, 2026. And executive session from Tuesday, August 11th, 2027. Be approved.
Motion made, supported by Commissioner Wessel. Discussion? Not. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Next up, we have approval of the agenda. I do have one addition under communications. I'd like to add under there, we'll have a presentation from our medical examiner, Dr. Hansman, here tonight. It didn't make it on the agenda, so I'd like to have that on there, but other than that, good.
I move we approve the agenda as amended. Support.
Moving forward, discussion? Not. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Do we have any commissioners here that have a conflict with items on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to communications. And first, we'll go with an update from Administrator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My update will be pretty brief this evening. As we speak, your budgets are being printed. I can say that hours and hours have been put into these. Weekends and evenings, and I can't stress enough how grateful I've been to the finance team and to Chief Deputy Clerk Jen Zawicki. We were here Saturday, they were here Sunday night, Monday night, getting all of this information compiled for you, which you will have before you leave this evening, in anticipation of our first meeting to discuss revenues on Friday. You will have a formal memo from me before Friday regarding things to look for, changes, things that we anticipate but we don't have a cost for yet, where we can make an estimate. I'm pretty far along on that memo, but it wasn't quite ready for me to distribute this evening.
Dangerously high blood pressure right now and feel completely fine. No one else. No one else.
Yeah, we haven't got
Everybody
public
okay?
We all need one of those.
Well, everybody take a breath.
It will. I've got some bills down here.
One thing that you will notice in my memo, and I had a meeting today with our representative from MMRMA, Matt Colson. September 1, we will be receiving our 2027 renewal paperwork, which are a whole series of questionnaires that get distributed to department heads. And then they can compile that and give us our estimate for 2027. So he gave me a rough idea of what we can expect for 27. But what you'll see tonight in your budget is a direct rollover, and that is reflected in my memo as well. There are a couple items where I can reasonably anticipate what the cost is going to be, but that will be ongoing in the next couple of months with those big ticket items. including our health insurance. One other, so you will have that memo from me before our meeting on Friday. Also today, I met with the M22 Byway Committee, which has been in development and has been meeting regularly over the last year and a half. Today, we discussed the development of bylaws. And in this group are township supervisors, administrators, MDOT, Eagle, and it's under the umbrella of Networks Northwest. Right now, it's anticipated that each county involved where M22 touches will have 3 representatives on a committee. The structure and the bylaws will be formalized in the next couple of months, which means by the time we have our committee of the whole to discuss boards and commissions, we will know what representation we will need to, you as a body will need to appoint for that M22 Byway Committee. I also had discussions with Joe Vandermeulen regarding the Poor Farm Barn, which was outlined in my administrator update over the weekend. And I did hear back from our legal counsel on that, so stay tuned on potential action on changes to a lease and potentially a county ordinance as that develops. I think that is about it from me this evening. Just another big thanks to the finance team and to Jen Sawicki for being so generous with time and energy and effort getting this budget put together for you tonight.
Any questions for Lauren?
Will the budget books be available maybe by Thursday so we can take a look at them before the meeting, or not possible?
I believe my entire finance team is listening and you will have them before you leave tonight.
Oh, okay, good.
They're
That's even better.
they're printing as we speak. So we met for a good chunk of the afternoon to go over any final changes and just so we were all on the same page with what we anticipate are the gaps or the things that will need to be filled in as we receive estimates for 2027. And they are being printed right now.
Thank you.
And there will be a copy in administration for public. If you would like to come and thumb through it, we would love input. Because these are your projects and your dollars at work. So we'll have a copy available for the public in administration.
Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to our next update, which is from Dr. Hansma from the Medical Examiner's Office. Maybe you have a hard copy in front of you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Hansma. It's my pleasure to be your medical examiner. Thank you for adding me as the addenda on here today. That was on my calendar, but apparently not on everybody's. So these things happen. You have before you a hard copy of the mortality statistics as reported through the medical examiner's office for your county. On WMed's website is our full annual report for the 14 counties that we serve as the medical examiner's office. So if you want to compare your county data to other counties, you can do that at your convenience, but you have just in front of you Leelanau County. And I'll just walk you briefly through the data. This is actually quite simple because this is a pretty quiet county as far as mortality statistics go. So just looking at the very first table on there, 2025 is your right-hand column. And basically what you can see is total number of deaths in the county went up slightly. Total number of deaths having to be reported to the medical examiner's office and investigated by our office went up since the prior year. Total number of bodies having to be brought to WMed for examination increased. The total number of complete autopsies performed increased. The one very encouraging statistic for me on this is very near the bottom. The second row from the bottom, and that is unclaimed investigations, which is 0. That is fantastic compared to most of our other counties. The number of unclaimed bodies that our office is having to try to process and investigate, it just keeps going up and up and up. And there were 0 in Leelanau, which is great. So below that, cremation permit authorizations, you're one of the few counties that actually took a little bit of a dip, and we did fewer cremation authorizations in this county. Most of them rose very slightly. On the next page is manners of death reported in Leelanau. And as with everywhere else in the world, natural deaths are the most common. So again, just down that right-hand column, 41 natural deaths, 4 accidental and 4 suicides. No homicides, none ruled indeterminate. Below that at the bottom, you see the deaths reported by age. Now you're reading across the very bottom row instead of the right column, 2025. No pediatric deaths reported to the medical examiner's office in 2025 out of this county. No young adults either. It starts age bracket 26 to 44 and up, so it skews high. Basically, from the mortality statistics perspective, Leelanau is a great place to live and die an old age, a natural death. That's pretty much what this comes down to. On the next page, you will see there's a table there tabulating pediatric deaths, but there were none in Leelanau for 2025, at least not that fell to the jurisdiction of the medical examiner's office. And then accidental deaths is the middle table. Again, you're going down that right column, 2025, 1 motor vehicle collision, 2 drug-related fatalities, and 1 drowning, which although every one of those is tragic, with how much lake frontage you have, having only 1 drowning is extremely encouraging. So that's great. Drug-related deaths below that, both of them, there were only 2 in your county, which also is very encouraging compared to the rest of the nation. And they were both ruled accidental, no suicidal or homicidal drug-related fatalities. The next page gives you suicides by age, and you're reading across the bottom row. There were 4 of them in 2025. They were all adults, no pediatric suicides. And right below that is the mechanism. All 4 of those suicides were by firearm. And that is it. Since I was an add-on, I talked fast. I did not want to abuse your time, but I do want to welcome you to ask any questions while you have me here. So that's the data, but if there's just anything, not data-driven that you want to hear about, I am at your command.
What you're saying is we're overpaying you.
No, I'm not. Not at all.
Well, I'm glad we don't need your services a lot.
Great.
Ross?
Yeah, great report here, shows that we're a great county to live in, and but I did read last night that I thought was interesting, not knowing that you were coming here tonight, is MLive gave a report for all the deer kills. And,
Oh, yeah.
I have to say, even our deer are even safe up here, because the middle of the state, we only had like 400 deer kills up here with cars, and middle of the state was like 1,000, 1,400, so
Yeah.
deer are even safe up here too.
Amazing.
So,
Mr. Money?
Yeah, when you talk about death investigated, and then you say 31 are MEI, what's MEI?
Yes, that is medical examiner investigator. So our investigator team that work as my agents respond to the death scene to do investigations.
And so there's a difference there of 18 in that, so are those ones that are sent down then to Western Michigan?
You're reading across which column, I'm sorry?
You're saying there's, from 2025, there's 31 MEIs.
Yes,
There's death investigated, there's 49.
yes,
So there's a difference there.
yes. So that is whether or not we could process it by a phone investigation or whether or not we needed to send an investigator to that scene to lay eyes on that body. Most of the time we need to send someone to the scene, but there are times where we take a call, we gather information and realize that this is not needing further response from our office.
Oh.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Appreciate you making the drive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a pleasant evening.
You. All right, and our next update is from Fishbeck. We got Therese here. You as well, if you want to sit up here.
Good evening. For those that don't know me, I'm Teresa Searles, Senior Brownfield Specialist with Fishbeck. I personally have worked with the Leelanau County Brownfield Redevelopment Authority since 2016, so about 10 years. Fishbeck is the contracted brownfield consultant to the Brownfield Authority here in Leelanau County, and so this presentation is on behalf of the LCBRA. So we're going to be talking about housing tax increment financing, or HTIF, or housing TIF, and how you can use that tool here in Leelanau County. Next slide. So outline of the presentation, there's a lot of acronyms when it comes to brownfield redevelopment. So I provided a few of those for you here. You can refer back to this presentation as needed. We're going to talk specifically about how tax increment financing works for housing projects. That's a relatively new use of this tool, and most people aren't familiar with it if they haven't used it before. So we're going to focus on housing projects here tonight. We'll talk about why incentives are needed for housing projects, how it works for a county board to partner with the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. And then while we're not seeking any action tonight, this presentation is strictly informational and educational. There is a proposed housing project that will be coming before this board at a subsequent meeting. So I'll go ahead and introduce that project at the end of the presentation. Next slide. So when we're talking about housing TIF, AMI, area median income, is kind of the big buzzword. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that term, but essentially that's the midpoint of household incomes for a defined geographic area. And so when we're talking about different affordability programs, that's what's typically used for that eligibility piece. BRA is simply Brownfield Redevelopment Authority here in Leelanau. That's the LCBRA, the Leelanau County Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. I've already explained what HTIF is. Sometimes you just hear TIF. You might hear TIF or TIR or see those terms interchangeable. Essentially, the tax increment financing is the tool. You might hear TIF plan for a brownfield plan. The revenues are the actual dollars that we would use for reimbursement. And then at the bottom there, we've got our 3 state agencies: EGLE, the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. If we have a project that has environmental contamination as a component and we're seeking state support, we might do a work plan going to EGLE. MEDC is the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, also sometimes referred to as MSF, the Michigan Strategic Fund. And now that we have housing in Brownfield, we are dealing with MSHDA, the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. Next slide. So when we talk about brownfield statute here in Michigan, we're talking about Public Act 381, the Brownfield Redevelopment Financing Act. Essentially, that's what outlines exactly how this tool can be used, exactly what needs to be included in a brownfield plan, the process for approval. All of those eligible metrics are defined in Act 381. In 2023, there was a major amendment to that act to allow housing. Not everyone agrees with including that in the brownfield statute, but that's what our state legislators chose. Essentially, they saw that we have a significant housing crisis here in the state of Michigan. They saw this tool that was working well and that many communities are familiar using, and they chose to add housing to the brownfield statute. So now all property that will be used for housing is eligible for brownfield TIF, not just your traditional brownfields. And we'll get into that definition a little more too. Ideally, we're talking about households that are earning up to 120% of the area median income. So there's certain activities that are eligible for income qualified households. And essentially we're talking about those folks usually in that 80 to 120 range. Eligible activities now include housing in addition to all the traditional ones. And what also changed in 2023 is that a payment in lieu of taxes, is now also capturable as TIF. Next slide. So if we have a brownfield project, essentially we need four things. One, we need to have a brownfield authority. You have an active authority here in Leelanau County, so we've got that covered. Two, you need to have eligible property. We'll get into what constitutes, but again, that's defined by statute. You need to have eligible activities, also defined by statute, and depending on the type of project it is and or where it's located, that can determine what's eligible. And then the last is tax revenues. If it's a tax exempt property and it's going to say tax exempt, then this isn't the right tool for that. So those are the four elements we need to have for a brownfield project. Next slide. So a brownfield redevelopment authority is an economic tool. There's little to no cost to the county, but they can benefit helping to move projects forward. They can apply for grants and loans on behalf of a developer. They can help either promote tools if you guys have a property that you know has been an eyesore and you can't get anyone to develop because it's got these environmental conditions and it's going to cost more and the community doesn't know what to do with it. The Brownfield Authority can help market that project. And then they can also administer incentives that help encourage that development. So these types of projects tend to create jobs, leverage investments, increase tax base, and improve property values. If it's a project that's seeking state support, they like to see local support, local approval of tax increment. So it kind of shows that skin in the game from a local standpoint. And brownfield authorities can also create and use a local brownfield revolving fund, or LBRF. And that's typically built into a brownfield plan to help create a sustainable program down the road to support other projects within the county. Next slide. So here in Leelanau County, the LCBRA meets the third Tuesday at 10 a.m. We do have Gail Meyer here with us. She's the Brownfield Director. So any property project that people are thinking about brownfield development, whether that's a private citizen, a developer, they have a project application that's available on the website. They can fill that out, come before the Brownfield Authority, and the Brownfield Authority can evaluate, is this the type of project we would like to support? The LCBRA does currently have an EPA assessment grant. It's winding down. They have through the end of September. So they have pretty much all of the funds allocated at this point, but they've been able to support quite a few projects here in the county with those funds. Next slide. So I talked a little bit about how they have that project application, but how they evaluate projects. The biggest thing is determining, is it a public good? This isn't something just the Brownfield Authority decides. That's a combined effort between the Brownfield Authority, the local jurisdiction, and this county board. And that public good can be realized in different ways. Is it a project that's bringing jobs? Is it a project that's bringing needed housing where we have a documented housing need? Is it increasing our tax base? Is it helping to create infrastructure that can also help the local jurisdictions as well? So there's a lot of different ways to define that public good. Ideally, we want the project to align with local goals. It could create public goods like workforce housing. And then something else is, this is more if we have an environmental project. Is there a liable party? Someone who's on record as they caused the contamination and they could be held liable for the cleanup. If that's the case, we want them to help cover those cleanup costs or pay for them in full. So if there is a liable party, we want to be aware of that and evaluate how best to use those tools. Often communities are left with environmental projects where we don't know who caused it, or that company is long out of business and they're just stuck with how best do we move forward with this project. Next slide. But essentially, again, that's the Brownfield Authority and the local units can determine that public good. So different types of incentives that a Brownfield Authority can use. Local TIF, that goes through a process. Every time there's a Brownfield plan, it first would go through the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. They would recommend that plan for approval to the county board. But before it comes to the county board, it would go to the local jurisdiction, wherever it's located. Leland Township, Sutton's Bay Township, whatever that local unit is. They need to review the plan, choose to support it, and then it'll come before this board. So this board would always be the final say in adopting a Brownfield plan. That's when we're talking about local taxes. If it's a project that is seeking state support, there will be a second step, which is one of those 3 state agencies we talked about, depending on the type of project, would then review the project after that. A Brownfield Authority can also establish and use an LBRF. And again, if we're seeking state support, then in addition to those local units, we would go to one of our state agencies as appropriate. Next slide. So remember, one of our 4 elements was we needed to have eligible property. Federally, the definition of brownfields is much more narrow. We're talking about contaminated properties or properties that are perceived to be contaminated, and that inhibits redevelopment. There's extra cost. There's concern about, developing those properties. And so these tools were created to help alleviate that. In Michigan, that definition has expanded quite a bit. So in addition to contaminated property, which definitely qualifies, we also have blighted property, functionally obsolete, so it no longer can be used the way it was intended. We have historic property. It's on the state historic register or a national historic register. At a transit hub, which we don't see very often, there's a very specific definition for that. Owned by a land bank or under control of a land bank. Any of those properties also can have adjacent or contiguous parcels, can be included in the same property. And then as of 2023, we also have housing property. So in order to even start the conversation of brownfield incentives, we need to determine that the housing meets eligibility. These are all the ways that a project can qualify. Next slide. In addition to being eligible for eligible property, we need to have eligible activities. Otherwise, what are we reimbursing? So there are significant costs to developing brownfield properties, and that's why these tools are in place to help reimburse those costs, to incentivize development of these types of projects to help communities meet their local goals. So some examples are environmental investigation and cleanup, demolition, abatement of asbestos, lead, or mold, infrastructure and site prep, and it depends on the type of project where those tools can be used. For non-housing projects, you need to be located in a core community, which is established by the Oprah statute. But for housing projects, we can use those tools to support income qualified housing developments and safety improvements. We have housing rehab. There's a variety of different housing development activities. And again, those are for households up to 120% of AMI. And then we have property owned or under the control of a land bank or a local unit can also include buying and selling the property. Next slide. So tax increment financing, you hear that tool a lot. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, but some of you, it may be your first time. So essentially, every piece of property has a base taxable value, assuming it's taxable property, and all of our brownfield projects are taxable. So that base tax value, sometimes called the initial taxable value, that's the taxable value of the property when the brownfield plan is put in place, when it's first adopted. So We pay attention to that. After the property is sold or redeveloped, the taxable value will increase. And essentially, we're talking that increment, that difference between the redeveloped cost or the sold cost and that base value. And that's the increment that we use to reimburse eligible costs. Next slide. This next slide is essentially going to be the same thing, but in a visual. I'm a visual learner, so I think it's kind of easier to see what we're talking about here. So a little bit smaller, but if you can see that blue line all the way to the left, that's a tiny green building and or house. So that represents our base taxable value. So whatever taxes were on a property, all those local taxing jurisdictions will continue to collect the taxes like they always did on that base value. If a development doesn't occur, the taxable value doesn't go up, and the taxing jurisdictions would collect as normal on the value of that property. However, if we have a redevelopment project, a developer is investing in the project that causes the taxable value to go up, and then you can see that orange represents the increment. So here we're showing an increment of about 300,000. That's just for example purposes. Over time, 25 to 30 years is when we're collecting that tax increment. So how a brownfield plan works is a developer has to have the money up front. They need to invest in the project up front. They can seek whatever sources to come up with that investment, but they have to pay for all the costs up front. They have to pay their taxes, whether it's the developer or the property owner. If that's not the same entity, taxes have to be paid in full. And then as the taxes are collected twice a year over those 25, 30 years, then the developer is slowly reimbursed. So it's very patient money, as people say in the industry. And over that time, they can get reimbursed for eligible costs. And then the last 5 years, according to statute, the BRA can continue to capture into the LBRF. Again, that's that fund to help create sustainable support for other projects down the road. Next slide. So the key thing to remember is that anytime a brownfield plan is put in place, no taxing jurisdiction will get less money than they were before the development. And in fact, if the development does not occur, they won't get more money down the road either, except for that slight annual increase. But if development occurs and a brownfield plan is in place, those taxing jurisdictions will continue to get that base tax value. And then over time, they will eventually, once the plan has been finished, they will get that realized higher tax increment. We talk about this but-for test, but for the investment in developing the property, no increase in taxes would exist. Tax increment is available from taxes paid in full by the developer or the owner. Next slide. There is some built-in accountability for housing projects. When we develop a brownfield plan, there's a certain sequencing. We need to develop this plan before the activities have taken place. There's a certain look back period, but for the most part, most activities are occurring after the brownfield plan. So there's a certain amount of estimates, but we make sure we're working with professional contractors, designers, architects to get reasonable estimates into the plan. And also, whatever is put in place, a developer is only going to get reimbursed based on their actual costs. So they have to submit invoices that need to be reviewed compared to the brownfield plan. And it's also dependent on the actual tax increment that's realized. If for some reason the taxable value that was projected in the plan is less, we can only reimburse on the actual tax increment revenues that are received. So that's essentially how a plan works. But the plan also has limits because these boards, when you're taking action on a plan, you set that maximum amount of reimbursement. So there's typically a contingency built into a plan, but above and beyond that, that's the maximum of what the developer can get reimbursed. And also the duration of the reimbursement. According to statute, a plan cannot last longer than 35 years. That includes if we delayed capture for 5 years. So the actual TIF capture is limited to 30 years. So once either limit is reached, the plan ends and all future tax increment flows back to the individual taxing jurisdictions. There also is state required annual reporting. So in the case of a housing project, the developer is required to submit to the Brownfield Authority at least once annually, any income verification forms, any rent rates, all of those things. And then the Brownfield Authority has to report to the state on any active brownfield plan they have every August. And then there also is a development and reimbursement agreement in place, and there are checks and balances in that as well. Next slide. So the area median income, again, these tools are in place for households earning up to 120% of the area median income. So in Leelanau County, what does that mean? I think you guys have a printed version. It might be a little hard to see up there. But these are limits established by MISTA once annually, typically in April. This year it was in May. So if we look for our 4-person income limit, if I look at 80%, that's 97,680. 120% is 146,520. So essentially that's the income range we're looking for in Leelanau County for a 4-person household. And then rent limits are established by bedrooms. So for example, a 2-bedroom rent limit at the 80% is set at $2,198. The 120% for 2-bedroom is $3,297. Also, we base these on using 30% of your income.
Is that per month?
Yes. We know all too often people are housing burdened and they're spending significantly more than that. But ideally, in any household's budget, they should not be spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And then we like to see if we have a brownfield plan and we say we're going to create housing for 100% AMI, then those income restrictions should qualify as well. We don't want to set a plan at 100% and then, rent it to someone that's making 120%. We want those rates to match. Next slide. So who are we talking about when we say this 80 to 120%? Because that feels somewhat arbitrary. It's numbers. What does that mean in terms of people? This is actually a pretty big majority of most communities. We're talking about our teachers, our firefighters, our paramedics, a lot of folks that have good paying jobs, but they might have college debt. Families starting out, they've got daycare to pay for, that this is their first home. A lot of these families that are the backbone of our communities are struggling to find housing. And so essentially, these are the groups that we're targeting for these incentives. These incentives are not geared towards low income housing. There are different tools available for that. This is kind of that middle affordable housing range. Next slide. And specifically, why do we need housing incentives? There's a variety of reasoning across the state, but also here in Leelanau County, there is a housing need. Every housing brownfield plan, it's required by statute, has to include that there is a determined housing need in that area, and it also has to include job growth data. So here in Leelanau County, there was a Northern Michigan Housing Needs Assessment published in 2023, and that identified 363 units that were needed as far as rentals and 1,462 units for sale housing units. So there's a significant need for all different types of housing. We know that many people are spending above and beyond that 30% and often half of their income on rent or mortgage. Michigan's housing stock is getting older and it's not being replaced. Most of our first-time homes are 1970 or earlier, and those are starting to require a lot more upkeep. Also, creating attainable housing allows local employers to fill jobs and help workers live closer to work. It's documented that many workers in this county have to live in other counties and drive because they can't find housing where they work. And a big one is the rising housing costs. I mean, this is no shocker to anyone. It's been on the news for years. We're seeing steel up 50%, which is huge. And developers simply cannot make a profit. And when they want to create affordable housing to help communities meet their housing need, I mean, it's just going negative. And so these tools were put in place to help meet the need so communities could create the much needed housing for their residents. Next slide. This is a very busy slide. I'm not going to go through all of it. We've kind of talked through it a little bit, but if you have a brownfield project, if you're working through this TIF reimbursement, typically a developer would come to the brownfield authority. Sometimes it's the local unit that proposes a project, but usually it's a developer coming. They would fill out that project application, get the support. We decide who's preparing and paying for the brownfield plan. Once we have that plan in place, again, starts at the brownfield authority, then goes to the local unit of government, and finally would come to the county board of commissioners. Those are the 3 steps for our local approval. Before this board could approve a plan, it does require a public hearing, which requires a 10-day advance notice. It also requires a 10-day advance notice to all the taxing jurisdictions that would be affected. So again, we're not seeking any action tonight. This is just information. That's how the process would work. We've already kind of talked through how the developer has to pay those costs up front. It's reimbursed over time, and that's established in that reimbursement agreement. Next slide. So there is a proposed brownfield plan housing project here in Leelanau County. The project has been recommended for approval by the Brownfield Authority. So the next stage is seeking support from the township. This is currently called the 980 Herman Road Housing Development. My understanding is the neighborhood will have a catchier name at some point in time, but this is what we're calling it for our purposes. So it's 2 parcels over 11 acres, 926 and 980 South Herman Road, and that's located in Sutton's Bay Township. This project will create 38 total housing units. It's a mix of for sale and rental units. There's $10.4 million investment to make this project happen. We have 1 developer seeking reimbursement, which is Peninsula Housing. They're a local nonprofit community land trust. And they also have an agreement in place with Homestretch to create 8 rental units. Homestretch is also a local nonprofit housing corporation. So out of our 38, 30 of those units will be for sale, 8 will be rental properties. We have 6 single family homes. They all will be 3-bedroom with a basement. We have 12 2-bedroom duplexes and 12 1-bedroom duplexes, and then 8 rental apartment units. Next slide. This is on the right, an aerial of the 2 parcels there. On the left, a site plan which has received conditional approval at this point from the township. I do want to mention all permitting, zoning, site plan approvals, all of those things are outside of the brownfield plan. They have to go through that normal process with the local units and those local boards, just like any other project. So when you see a brownfield plan, it's just approving that tax increment. Next slide. Here's some renderings, just an example of what these housing units may look like. So let me see which ones I put in here. The top left, that is an example of a 3-bedroom single family home. The top right is a 1-bedroom duplex, although the 2-bedroom looks pretty similar. And then there's a couple of floor plans here. The bottom left is an example of a 2-bedroom duplex floor plan. Bottom right is a 1-bedroom duplex. Next slide. The benefits to Sutton's Bay Township and Leelanau County, the big one is that it helps to support the housing need. It helps to meet that demand. This isn't going to solve the problem. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. Now you don't have a housing need anymore, but it does help to make a dent. And the nice thing about this project is 100% of the units will be affordable. So it's investing significant capital in the community, creates significant infrastructure there in the township. It allows the residents to live where they work and expands the local tax base. And the benefit to the developer, the TIF request is only 27% of their development costs. The only way this project works is because this is a nonprofit entity and this is a mission-based project. They are seeking support from private donation, from grant funds where available, and then their own private funds. But a for-profit developer simply could not make the math work. But using these tools in place, we can create needed housing here in Leelanau County. Next slide. So this is kind of what's been done to date and our next steps. So we're only through the Brownfield plan has been reviewed and recommended for approval by the Brownfield Authority. I did do a similar training presentation to the Sutton's Bay Township. We did present the plan. They weren't ready to take action on it. They would like their legal counsel to review the plan. So that will be the next step, is having that board pass a resolution of support, and then it will be presented to this board for consideration at a subsequent meeting. Again, ahead of that, we will need to make sure there's a public hearing in place, 10-day notification, all of those things in place. Next slide. There are state agencies that all have guidance documents and resources available. So I put those on there if you want to learn more. And then next slide, I believe, is just my contact and Gail's. Yes, so that's my contact information, and Gail Meyer, again, the Brownfield Director. I'm also here for any questions that come up tonight.
Any questions?
Thank you for that lesson.
You're welcome.
Money?
Yeah, when you get the TIF money, so does that affect the school's taxes?
Great question. So if it is a project that is seeking both local and state support, which this project would, we would need that second step of state approval. So we'd have a work plan that would go to MSHDA. If MSHDA approves it, then yes, we would be, for Brownfield taxes, we're talking about state education tax and school operating. Those are our two school taxes. ISD is considered a local tax. So those taxes, again, just the increment would be collected. And when it comes to the state education tax, half of that does go to the Department of Treasury for their state Brownfield fund.
What about the villages? Like they've got villages, you know, for fixing the buses, the schools or whatever. Are all of those villages on the TIF?
If it's a debt millage, it's not eligible for capture, but any standard ad valorem millage is eligible.
Okay, so the road commission's tax, the senior services, the early childhood,
Yes,
all those would be affected when they go for new taxes.
yes. And any new tax that comes in place after the Brownfield plan gets approved is automatically capturable, assuming it's an ad valorem tax.
So even the county taxes would be, and also local townships.
Yes,
So all of them, as they go up, whatever the percentage rate is, they would get that percentage on that property.
so they would continue to collect that base value, what they've been for the term of the length of the plan, but that increase would be capturable for reimbursement in the plan. If it goes up, essentially that means the plan just gets reimbursed faster and everyone gets to that point where the plan ends and gets that higher rate at a sooner time period.
But you're saying nobody loses taxes, but that's kind of a misnomer. Because if senior services goes to, get their millage renewed, that rate, that increase on it, they would not, that would go back to the developer, is that correct?
There would be a delay in when they would receive that increase until after the plan was approved, yes.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I've heard some of these before, but this is one of the better presentations, I gotta say, as far as.
Thank you.
explaining. And it is new, I mean, this housing, and one of the part of your presentation was, all property that would be used for housing is now eligible for brownfield TIF. Not just for traditional, is that too wide open of a statement?
I appreciate you asking that question because it begs the question, is every single house come in here and want brownfield incentives? So the way statute is defined, it's one or more units. But remember that public good. So if I come in here and I'm developing a property and I'm creating one housing unit, does that help you meet your housing need? Is it worth it to use the tax incentives to support that one project? Most times a community is going to say, no, that's not the best use of this tool. So I think why they included that one housing unit was for a mixed use project where it might have some commercial and some residential to allow flexibility for the local communities. But again, you have to have that meet the housing good. You need to have that identified need. So typically we're talking about more projects, and we're not talking about, I'm just a homeowner and I want a new roof, so I'm investing in my project and I should use brownfield incentives. That's not typically going to pass the litmus test and seek board approval.
Yeah, well, I just think it's way too open. I mean, we're the litmus test.
Mhm.
And for me to define good, if someone builds a house and taxes are paid on it, is that good? I don't know. That just seems way too open.
It's a common good.
Anyways, I'll give you, just let me finish. I was looking at the numbers and I've spent a long time since I've rented, and usually, when I rented, it was a rent couch. But it seems like because our average housing costs or our income, because we're a well-off county, kind of inflated those upper numbers. For instance, I was looking up 2-bedroom apartment rentals that seem to be like $1,800, $2,000 a month. And the maximum allowed here would be almost $3,300 a month. So so my question has to do with, is that set in stone, that 120%? And I don't know what the thought is on what you're going to charge, but it seems to me that these numbers seem to be above what the market value is for private developers, what they end up charging.
So these numbers are established by the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, and they are evaluated by county. So every county has different numbers. So they check the data, they update them annually. So it is done with intention for this specific geographic area. Again, it depends on, what bedroom type, what housing type we're looking at. It depends on the household size. So those numbers can vary quite a bit.
You see what I'm saying, though, how we're in such a different position because of who we are. We're a very rich county. I don't think Mr. Mulvey intends on charging that full amount. But, and again, Mr. Mulvey and I are about the same age, and anyway, that was my question. Having an upper limit of $3,200 for an apartment seems higher than the local market, to be honest.
So that's the upper limit of how these tools can be employed, specifically if we're talking about activities that are designed for income qualified households. But often when we see a project come forward, it's at a lower rate. You know, say we're targeted at the 80 to 100%. So this is just what statute defines. And then each project would be evaluated locally of what those local jurisdictions want to support.
I should have qualified that too by saying that I understand the utilities are included in the numbers, the 120% numbers, and they're not. If you just go look up apartments, usually that's a separate bill. But
Any other questions, Mr. Wessel?
Not a question, but two comments. One, is Teresa is so helpful to the Brownfield Authority. Thank you for your work and your presentation. But you referenced that 2023 housing survey. So just for those that are not aware of it, there's a housing collaborative in Leelanau County, and it's made up of all sorts of organizations, villages, townships, Peninsula Economic Foundation, the Peninsula Chamber, Sleeping Bear Group, Peninsula Housing, Homestretch. And they have just launched a survey, and there's already been more than 1,000 people. And I'd urge all of us to get on there and fill out that survey, because it's going to be today's current data. And I'll tell you, the initial 1,000 that we looked at, the results, there is so much support for what that collaborative is doing and what you're talking about doing. So thank you.
Mr. Money?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the history of, you know, or of the developer. I mean, has their Peninsula Housing done any other developments besides this?
Yes. I mean, this is what they're in the business of doing is creating housing. This is a community land trust. So the model that they use is that they retain ownership of the land, and then each homeowner would purchase the structures. And so when
They don't own the land underneath their home?
no.
I mean, that's communism there. That's what they do.
So this is we do have the developer representative here if we need it. Again, we're not taking action on any plan items today, but essentially that allows them to have restrictions in place. They can keep these units affordable. Also, you know, if it's your primary residence, many of these houses will qualify for the principal residence exemption. And so for the for sale units, we see pretty low TIF. And so that's even more why these tools are needed to make these projects work. On the rentals, we don't have that, so we're able to capture a little bit more, but there's just not as much tax increment if it's the primary residence exemption.
So is there a separate tax on the property and a separate tax on the house?
Yes, so the land, we would see a little bit more increase. And so the assessor will set that up, and that's something else I should mention. When we have a brownfield plan in place, we're talking about a geographic area. So if parcel IDs change, if addresses change, that's okay. That's pretty common for those types of things to happen at some point over 30 years. And the assessor will keep that tracked. The local jurisdiction will track that for the geographic area. So if it creates two different parcel numbers, they'll just make sure they have that tracked against the brownfield plan.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, this is just a broad brush overview of how a brownfield plan is put in place. We're not here to argue any specific project. It's nice to know we have one on the horizon, and we'll get into depth on that at a day that we have set aside to do that and put it on the agenda. We're getting too much into specifics on a topic that is not on our board yet. And I just like to move forward.
All right, do we have any other questions for Therese?
I would just like to add that the fact that the community land trust owns the land is one of the major factors in being able to keep the price low on the home. And that's so at resale. And when they resell, there's a limit to the increase in value, so it stays affordable. And that's what the purpose of the land trust is. And I may have gotten that partially wrong, but that's the concept.
All right, go ahead, Teresa.
So I'll just say that when we do bring the plan forward, if there's more information that's desired on how the community land trust works, we can definitely be prepared to present that at the time any action would be sought.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you. Very in depth. Appreciate that. So I'm sure we'll have more questions as time goes on, but for now, I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, with that, we'll move on to our first public comment. We'll start out with our 1 minute general topics of county concern, followed by 3 minutes agenda specific. So do we have any public here that wishes to address the 1 minute general? Yes, sir.
You've been now staged.
Wonderful. Let's bring in the receipts. All right. Welcome. My name is Alex John Turco. I'm in District 3. I live in Suttons Bay on Stony Point. After a crisis, there's an opportunity to leave past factionalism and divisiveness behind, an opportunity to rally behind fresh leadership and move forward for the common good. I believe that the silent majority of Leelanau County is wishing that the well-meaning staff here have the very best in their endeavors to move us beyond the mistakes of the past and towards a brighter future. I would like to offer public praise and support for all of the hardworking county staff that are striving to turn over a new leaf. I also praise the courage and bravery of Finance Director Risbridger and Interim Administrator Cipher through navigating this challenging time. I believe that the people are rooting for you, and we wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The public comment for the 1 minute. Lois?
Sure. Hard to follow that. I think you did a great job. Lois Bailey, Village of Suttons Bay. So I was on the Housing Action Committee, and that has evolved into a housing collaborative, and Ty just gave it all away. So yes, we do have a survey that we're doing. We need more people who are renting, and we are light on responses from Casson, Solon, Cleveland Township. So ask people to fill it out, please. So Larry and I went down to a ribbon cutting in Frankfurt of affordable housing. 4 of these small homes, just like you saw in that illustration there, around a courtyard. One of them was occupied by their librarian, a physical therapist, and a nurse, or in 2 others. I didn't hear that they had somebody in the 4th one, but a very attractive part of the neighborhood. You know, this is the kind of housing you need to support so that you can house these kinds of people in your neighborhood. Or if you say no, and you don't want these kinds of people in your neighborhood, what are you going to do when you need some of these services? So I would encourage you to think positive and be there under that tent and have a ribbon cutting and feel the world cheering for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Carrie Eater, Empire Township. A few months ago, I was hopeful that the Leelanau County government was working toward the establishment of best practices in the functioning and oversight of its departments. You, the board, were scheduling training for yourselves, and there were new professional hires who offered a way forward that seemed consistent with how I think professional, modern institution runs. Much has happened to disrupt that way forward, but I wanted to let you know that I continue to have faith in the board and the county staff to keep pursuing a way forward. And I hope you will continue to work together and find agreement to undertake those best practices. There's so much that this government can and must do, as we've just been hearing, and you need to attend to your community. Thank you.
Any other public comment for the 1 minute? Yes, ma'am.
I've never done this before, so I wrote it all out. Hi, my name is Miriam Reenstra. I live in Elmwood Township. Lately, there have been some pretty heated comments on social media regarding folks in this room. It's really easy to leave a heated comment online. There's rarely any consequences, but that's often not the reality because people don't usually take the time to leave positive comments. This is why you can never trust an Amazon review because people review when they don't like it, but you don't really see the reviews of people that love it. So I'm here today to leave some positive comments. My husband, Josh Barman, has been helping Sam Getzinger start a group called Common Ground. This group aims to bring people together and build relationships in our community amongst folks who have differences in opinion. Not an easy goal, but one that we need to pursue. I've been really impressed and grateful with the commissioners who've come to the meetings. They did not have to do this, but they took the time out of their busy schedules to be part of this group and work to make our communities better. So I want to give a shout out to Commissioner Yoder, to Commissioner Algier, to Commissioner Wessel, and to Commissioner Robbins. And then also a thank you to everybody sitting in front of me today, both the commissioners and the staff working behind the scenes to help our community be better, because we need you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment for the 1 minute? With that, we'll move to the 3 minute agenda specific. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Becky Beauchamp. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the League of Women Voters, Leelanau County. So I am that board's representative on the Leelanau County Housing Collaborative. I'm here to tell you why the Leelanau League has made affordable housing a priority of our advocacy efforts. We believe it is in the self-interest of every Leelanau County resident, whether year-round or seasonal, to be deeply concerned about housing availability. The lack of housing is at a crisis level for the people who work every day to keep our communities healthy and vibrant. Increasingly, this housing shortage affects the everyday services on which we all rely. Fire departments and the sheriff need employees they can mobilize quickly. Teachers, maintenance workers, medical support staff, restaurant workers, and all those who help our communities thrive can't drive burdensome distances every day. Together, we must work creatively to build affordable homes for the people who make our county work. Thank you, and we look forward to many community conversations.
Any other public comment on the 3 minutes agenda specific? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to commissioner comments. Seeing none.
It just said tomorrow for Kids Fishing Day at 12:30 downstairs. We're gonna have folks who were involved and such as that. We're bribing you with pizza. And Heather Henninger will be there to give us an overview of the biology of a kids fishing pond. So anyone who wants to show up and be a part of that, be sure to appreciate having you there. What time is that? 12:30. Order extra pizza if you're coming.
All right, I'm gonna read all the statement here that I've been thinking about over the weekend that I've put together that I'm gonna read off. So recently I've been very disturbed with some of the accusations that have been swirling around, whether that's hurled at commissioners, staff, or anyone for that matter. One thing I have learned in my tenure in public office is that it rarely ever accomplishes anything, but rather creates tension and causes division. As a county, we have seen our fair share of turmoil, but if we take it on as a challenge rather than pointing fingers, it can help us grow stronger. I can't stress enough the importance that we, as citizens of Leelanau County, lay down our swords and focus on Leelanau County first. I urge all public, staff, and especially this board to take a strong look at how we can be better leaders that promote a positive outlook for Leelanau County. We must find ways to work together, build others up, and find the value in those around us. We have so much to be thankful for and to look forward to, but we will miss it if we allow outside distractions to overrule that. My message to this board is to do our job as commissioners, stay focused on the job at hand, and provide a positive outlook for the people of Leelanau County. Yes, we will have disagreements, debates, and good laughs. At the end of the day, we are still neighbors and hopefully friends as citizens of this beautiful county. Let's strive to keep Leelanau, and to stay focused on the job at hand. We live in the most beautiful slice of paradise. Let's not allow anyone to take that away from us. So,
Thank you, Rick.
with that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. And I'll read off a quick statement. Purpose of the consent agenda is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one motion without discussion. Any commissioner may ask that any item on the consent agenda be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected and will not need a second. Any commissioner wish to remove anything? If not, I'll take a motion. Mr. Money,
I'll make a move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Support.
moved and supported. We'll go over the roll call.
Commissioner Bunnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell,
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins,
Yes.
Commissioner Walter,
Yes.
Commissioner Wessel,
Yes.
Chairman Yoder,
Yes.
Commissioner Eldire.
Yes.
7-0.
All right, thank you. And that just cuts off 3/4 of our agenda. Moving on. Action items, we got under administration, audit, feedback, and next steps. I believe we had that on our executive agenda and kind of had a discussion on that. I believe since then we've heard from our treasurer. So I guess just more discussion. I believe Lauren might have something to add to that as well.
Minimally. So you heard from Finance Director Ray Risbridger at the executive on Tuesday with the Finance Department's experience with the audit. We also got feedback from the Leelanau County Road Commission in their experience, which was quite similar to our Finance Directors in regards to communication. They random tests not done on payroll, AP, AR. As well as their understanding and expectation of thoroughness. We did receive feedback from the treasurer as well with suggestions on if there are inroads that can be made with the current auditing firm. And you were presented on Tuesday with a few different options. So that is where we stand. We've got some feedback. Have some options in front of you, and we will proceed at your direction.
You know, I said this last week, and I guess I want to say it again, and that is communication is really important. If there are things that we expect that they're not doing, we need to communicate that. But I think jumping from one company to another year to year, is also not a good idea. So I would support talking to them about what we feel they didn't do. And if again, they seem to be incapable of doing that, after a couple of years, we could change. But communication is always very, very important. And it's too bad some of that communication didn't happen during the audit, but I understand that because we know what they're gonna do and they're not. Now that we have the experience, let's communicate.
Mr. Wessel?
And I feel somewhat the same way, and I do feel that usually it's a very good practice to maintain the same auditor for 2 or 3 years, but not for too long. I did do some checking on our auditors after I heard some concerns, and they are respected in the state, and they've done lots of municipalities. We may have had some questions with them. A part of it may have been on our end because we had so many transitions in personnel and staff. And they were really reviewing the finances for the year before the current team was even here. And I would just caution us to be careful how we talk about our vendors so that we can continue to get good vendors that want to work for us.
Thoughts, Mr. Campbell?
Not unusually, but anyways, I have the opposite thought. I think, like I said before, if you get a D- on your audit and you want to change your auditor, well, obviously there's a reason you want to change your auditor. If you get an A+, I don't think, and the auditor doesn't meet, we have an independent finance department. What I heard from our finance director was that the auditor was not up to the standards that one would expect of auditing our books. And for us to turn around and tell them, well, you really should have done it this way. I don't think that's a proper step either. I think if they weren't up to our standards the first time, it's not up to us to set those standards. They should have come in here with those standards. And they should have impressed us with the thoroughness of their work. And they didn't. So I would say, I don't have a problem at all going out again and looking for an auditor. And I don't think it will say anything bad about Leelanau County or its books. As a matter of fact, it might reflect more highly because we're looking for a more strict adherence to auditing standards. My thoughts.
You know what, I have a question. What I heard was there were some communication that happened. I didn't hear there were problems with the actual auditing of finances. It's just that they didn't come and meet us. Those are the kinds of things you can say. We'd appreciate it if there was more interaction with staff.
I think Lauren just went through some.
Yeah, and what we heard from our finance director, as well as our component unit is, we say, oh, we have a clean audit, I don't know that we necessarily want a 100% clean audit for someone to come in and say, you're doing things 100% correctly all the time. We want room for improvement. We want someone to look at our operations and our procedures and our processes and give us some constructive feedback. They did say in their presentation to us that we can expect some changes in the 26 audit based on the transitions that have happened since January. But the departments were not given fraud questionnaires, our cash handling processes were not examined. There are some questions that if we could stay with this audit firm, we need to very seriously relook at the contract that we have with them and be very, very specific with what we are looking for as far as a thorough examination of all of our financial statements. I think we heard that pretty clearly from our finance director. And as the primary holder of that relationship, I rely on their expertise on that.
Do we have our finance director up here? Does that make sense?
Yeah. We got clean audits from agreement for years.
I wanted to respond to our administrator. I do want a clean audit. And I don't want the auditor coming in and saying there's a lot of things you ought to be doing differently. I want to be doing it so the auditor comes in there and applauds us for what we're doing. But we've got a long history of good audits, and we've always tried to avoid any weaknesses in our audits, any criticism in our audits, and I want that to continue. I don't want an auditor to come in here to make us better. I want an auditor to come in here and confirm that we're doing everything the way we're supposed to do it, and it's legal and it's fiscally responsible. Yeah, but we want a consultant Let's bring a consultant in to do that. So we differ on that.
That's fine.
Mr. Robbins?
I'm a little confused sitting here because when I was on the board previous, that's what our previous finance department and some of our board members, that's what we strive for. We wanted the perfect thing. We wanted a perfect audit. And now we're like, now that we got a perfect audit, now we're saying that's not what we want. So from where I'm sitting, I don't know what you guys are trying to tell us here, because the previous finance department, that's what they strive for. Now you're telling that's not what we're supposed to strive for.
Well, maybe I wasn't clear with what I was saying. I'm saying that the processes weren't examined in such a way that they could make that determination. Our AP, AR, cash transactions weren't examined in a way that they could say you're doing it right, because they did not look at them. So maybe I misspoke in that.
I guess the question I have is, the real answer, what should they have found that you said they didn't find?
So there's nothing that I'm saying that they especially should find, but there's definitely suggestions that I was expecting
What
to
can you
receive.
explain? What, give me something I can go on so I can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, so I mean, a simple control that I would have expected them to go through is that all of our journal entries rely on a sequencing order. So to basically prove that a single journal entry has been used appropriately, they're all sequenced from 1 to, I think we're at like 200,000 and something in the number. So I would expect them to ask us about that sequencing process, and then also kind of go and look in our journal entries. And I think I provided one journal entry throughout the whole audit, and I was never asked about that control and that sequencing measure. So that's kind of like one of the items. And so it's not that I don't want a good audit. I want an A+. Like, if anybody knows me, I'm 100% A+. That's what we want. But I also don't want an A+ just handed to me. I want to know 100% with my whole gut that we're deserving of that A+, and that everything that we're doing is correct. Because if I'm doing something wrong, I want to know. And also, if they're going to give us that great walk away from it, there's still always going to be suggestions of something to do better, where they could suggest, you're doing this and this is not wrong, but we rely heavily upon compensating controls, which is basically outside of any automated system. So like, it's basically like 2 levels of approval, which is dual authorization. And so everything is done manually. And so basically it's a signature. I sign or my assistant director signs. And I know that's not the greatest way. And so I would expect them to be suggesting of different ways we can get that dual authorization, or looking in our payroll process and seeing that we retain every single document on the wall when they ask for our payroll books, and they go, you're retaining everything. And really, like, when we look at other counties, you don't need to retain every single one of these documents. You need to retain these. And so it's not as much as we don't want an A+. We're more or less just wanting the thoroughness and to be ensuring that we're not doing something that we shouldn't be doing, if that makes sense. I feel like I went a little bit on a tangent, but if that makes more sense.
A little bit, I guess. When I go back to early in the year when before your arrival, the predecessor was let go, and the tone in this room was the sky's falling. We're going to have this terrible audit. All of a sudden, the audit firm shows up, we get a good audit. So I don't know what happened in there. We got a good audit. I guess I look at it, you're new, they're new. It's only 1 season. And I think we have to be patient, and you got questions. I think we should be talking to them, ask them what maybe you may be doing wrong. It comes down to, like Glenn says, it's communication here. And I think we just need to, let's relax and give them another year, and maybe another year from now, if there's some issues, we come to the table and we talk about it. But I think just to go out right now, no, that's not the thing to do. I mean, it's going right back to enterprise. We haven't even given enterprise a chance, and we want to get rid of them. So I mean, it's like, we don't give anything a chance around in this building anymore. It's just, if we don't like it today, we get rid of it. So I think we gotta wait 1 more year and give them a season, and then we can discuss it, whether we move forward with it.
And communicate what we need.
Mr. Funny?
Yeah, I mean, I hear your concerns, and, and I would be concerned too if they weren't looking at the things that normally are looked at, so. But I do think that we should, we'll probably stick with this one here. That doesn't create too many problems for you.
I mean, we have an A+, so we should be good, right? Kidding.
But I mean, if those things continue, then I do think that we need to really look at it, but I really appreciate you saying that. So. At least that's my sentiment. I can't speak for the board.
So just one more comment. So one thing we could do is you could speak with them and mention, question. I would have thought you would have done this or that or the other and see what they say.
Mhm.
And if they're amenable to meeting some of those needs as well. And if they are, I would say we should stay with them for another year.
Just want to say one more thing and I'm gonna finish up. I mean, no, I respect what you're doing. I think you're leading us in the right direction. It kind of goes back to Steve's comment. We got to be patient and let's just maybe work together and move forward and see where it goes.
So I guess if I can just chip in, the sentiment I'm getting from the board is, to continue on the current track that we're in, at least from the majority that are here right now. A suggestion I might have is if, not that I need more meetings or staff needs more meetings, but if there's some sort of way that we could communicate with the auditors, whether that's with the administrator, finance, maybe the treasurer, myself, and just maybe communicate with them better as to what we're looking for, what some of the expectations, because some of my questions would be, was that stuff in the RFP, I guess, as to what we were expecting for them to, was that detailed in there? Maybe that's something that we missed, that needs to be questioned out. I don't know. Those are some of the questions I have, but if that's where the majority of the board is at, like, I'm happy to facilitate something like that where we can sit down and just have a conversation and get on the right page or same page, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the direction. We can revisit the contracts, look at what was requested, schedule a meeting, and see what we need to do to move forward.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, and I would especially like these ideas to be, we have a contract that I think is a black or white. We either renew it or we don't, but hopefully they would be open to ideas as far as adding in more detail as to what they look at. And that actually into the contract rather than just discussing.
I mean, that's something that we'll have to look at, we'll have administration maybe look at that, just see, is that something that we missed in the contract? Maybe look at that, and maybe if there's some changes, bring it back to the board or something. If there's more things to look at, so, I don't know. Thoughts, ideas? Mr. Walter?
So you've got audit experience, correct?
Correct.
So your concern is, the way you conducted an audit wasn't the way they conducted an audit.
Not exactly. No, the thoroughness. Yes.
Yes, okay. So that, so that's your concern. And I can understand that. So, then we should communicate that to them that, hey, we liked your audit, it was pretty good, it was great to us, but I was surprised you didn't, dig deeper into this or that.
Mhm.
And then ask what their justification was for it. And, well, our contract didn't require it, or, everything was so good, we didn't think we needed to beat it up. So, that's just how I see it, So, yeah, we gotta go another year to see what's really going on, because it's been good to just jump, but, next year, if we have any concerns, or this fall, when it starts all over again, we need to communicate better with the other team.
But I've never asked a teacher who gave me an A to go back and look at it, dissect it, so I can get a B too, so you gotta be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Things we did, realize how hard.
Well, that's at least a sentiment I get, and I'll work with administration and finance to go through that, but no, I appreciate your honest comments on that, and yeah, appreciate your recommendations. That's what this board is looking for, so I appreciate it, so.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I just want to commend Alan for speaking like a teacher. A plus, and, you know, I thought you were a newspaper reporter.
My dad always said he never got 100% on any of his newspapers. And I can vow that I have not come close to that either. So 100% is a little tough to do. Well, I've had some teachers though that kind of walk in the room and get A's, and I think we don't want that either.
All right, moving on to item number E, which is our committee structure, personnel finance policy. I know we had some discussion on that, and it was brought originally by Commissioner Wessel. I know, did you want to spearhead that again? See what commissioners think here?
I mean, I haven't thought much of it beyond what I said last week, but we have a whole backlog of projects that this board and previous boards and consultants and have given us to do. We have a number of policies that haven't been reviewed for many years. And we've got a big Raymond report, recommendations and suggestions for finance. And we've got a climate survey that says we've got some staffing issues, and we've got staff retention. And we've talked about salary studies and looking at salary ranges. I think we got a lot of work to do. And my suggestion is that we have a personnel committee, a finance committee, and a policy committee. They have no authority to do anything except work as a committee and come back and share with this group, and this board makes a decision. But just a working group, I would further suggest that these committees not have a per diem. And they're done by just as a part of our regular board service. So it's not an issue of impacting our budget. And that we move forward with a committee structure and get our work done.
I agree, we need to work on those things. I struggle with 3 different committees. There are 7 of us. Have 3 people on each committee. There's overlap. And I still like the idea of getting the whole group and having a work session. And working on those things one at a time. Over time, it'll take longer. But I struggle with, you can't have 2 people on a committee.
Well,
I think so.
You do you and Alan are on committee, or no, Steve's on there.
Well, yeah, there's 2.
Well, 3.
All 3, yeah.
Well, you're gonna have 2 commissioners on a committee in a department head. Or an assistant department head. So you don't have 2 people on committee, you've got 3, maybe 4. That are looking at our practices, how we're doing things, and what is our best practice? And are we meeting that standard and set that standard? And the policy is the same thing. So we could have 2 people on each committee with the department head that we're looking at, saying, okay, what do you guys need? What can we make your operations run smoother? What do we need to bring us up to the standard we want to be at? What standard do we want to be at to begin with? And we can do that structure with communication with the department heads.
I could see that.
Commissioner Rollins?
I like Mark's idea, but I would even consider going a step further. I mean, you look at what we have out in our community. We've got each committee for finance, personnel. I mean, maybe there's somebody out there we have at large to be a committee of 4 and it bring in some fresh ideas that we may not be looked at.
I'm struggling with policy committee. Policy, or we're talking about policy. I'm reading this. Personnel finance policy.
One of our major duties is the review and establishment and approval of county policies. And we have a whole policy book, and some of them haven't been reviewed since 2010 and 2011, and they all need to be reviewed.
I think most of them need to be touched. We have just under board policies, I think there are 56. And many of them are fine. But there are many that are in need of attention and some of them urgently. At least just to update them, even if it was 10 years ago, just to make sure that there's eyes on them and that they're current. If anything, it would be nice to, I mean, I can go through them, I can work with the departments in which those policies are enacted and affected by. But it would be nice to have kind of a strategy, a plan with which ones are the most urgent and then work them through the editing and approval process.
Because it's safe to say, it would take you a long time to go through all our policies. I don't think it's gonna happen.
If it's just me, yes.
Yeah, maybe having you involved and maybe just even a couple other people, it's still not gonna, I mean, some of those policies were written before the 10 Commandments.
You know, and that's another thing too, some of them are policies that might be totally out of date, we don't need them at all.
Yes, it's very possible. And it could be that we need to add policies and retire policies. I think it as a whole, it's worth a look.
Yeah, we're talking about doing a strategic plan. You know, we've done a lot of looking at that. And I would think that would be something we do first before we start doing, dividing into committees and everything else. We've tried committees before, it all went back to committee of the whole. So maybe it worked better with this group, but it certainly didn't before. And so I would say, let's wait till we do our strategic plan and then we can see if at that time we want to divide into committees.
I posed that question Monday in our meeting of the Northern Michigan Counties Association. I gave you guys a report on it. And ended up talking to 4 commissioners. And they were of the opinion that they were familiar with the process. To some extent it was tried and they all ended up going away from it for a couple reasons. One, it just wasn't an economical use of time, because a lot of times you did your work and you brought it back and then the full board looked at it and maybe what you did was something they didn't want, or maybe what you did takes a long time for them to get caught up. And they also had problems setting committees because people wanted to be on this committee or that committee, and it turned into a struggle. But regardless, the economy of time in those cases was in those counties. Doesn't mean it wouldn't work here. I mean, we're pretty happy bunch. Big work here, but in those counties, it wasn't a good economic use of time and effort. So I'm just reporting what I heard from folks. I really went into that pretty neutral.
Mr. Bunnington, I'll weigh in.
Yeah, well, the experience I had is that what was decided in the committee had to completely be rehashed and sometimes end up with the same decision, but everybody wanted to know all the things that we had discussed in the committee. So it was we spent as much time with the group as we had at the committee. So I didn't see where we were gaining anything at the committee. We came back with a recommendation that had to explain all the different ideas that were presented and how we came to a conclusion, and then everybody questioned it and why it was. And so I felt like we did everything twice. That's been my experience with it.
I'll offer my 2 cents for what it's worth at least, but I contacted a lot of our adjoining counties to see kind of what structure they have as far as committee goes, and none of them, Benzie, Grand Traverse, Antrim, the closest one I found was Manistee, they have a structure like this. All the other counties do not have a structure like this. Some of them have tried it, went away from it. I guess just my thoughts here, and we don't have to go this direction or whatnot. I know policy is something we had discussed. That was one of our goals this year, to get addressed, to go through policies. That's something I could support as a policy committee to deal with that, because for instance, the conflict of interest committee that we're dealing with, we've had 2-3 meetings on that, and that's much better having a committee structure of that dealing with it than rather the whole board here, where we're constantly bringing it back every month to rehash it. Where that committee is focused on it and hopefully bringing to this board a finished document that we can work off of, where a lot of those questions are filtered out, answered, legal review and all that kind of stuff. So I can see the benefit of a policy committee to kind of hash that out, where a lot of those, yeah, that gets ironed out and a lot of those questions get answered prior to the full board here. And for me, if I set up a policy committee, I'd like the members of this board on there that are most adamant about policies, because that's where the most questions come from. So I think Commissioner Campbell, if you wanted to be on that, because that's something that I've been hearing that you're very passionate about. So we're always there. So it's that's kind of a finance. I can see the benefit of that. I struggle with that a little bit because I see how thin stretched our finance department is right now, just with meetings and stuff, and we add more to their plate. I agree with you on the RAND report. There's a lot that has to be looked on that. But at the same time, I don't want to overburden finance where they can't succeed as fast as we want them to, by putting too much on their plate as well, so I see there are issues that we need to focus on. Is it the right time to do that? I don't want to do it too quick where it crashes and burns either. I do see a benefit in it, but for right now, I think the biggest benefit I see is the policy committee, to start working on that, where we don't have to, as a full board at every executive meeting, have to spend an hour or two going through a policy. That's my 2 cents. So, Mr. Robbins.
You mentioned finance, I mean, would it be stretching now? HR is going to be included in a lot of those policies. I mean, does she have time to, she's got to be involved too, I believe.
That'd be the policy.
Yes, she for policies, I think human resources and myself and likely Jenny Herman as well would be very involved in that process.
Or is there a certain time of year that maybe there's a little wiggle room there, would be a lot easier to
say after budget?
Mr. Russell?
Well, I can read the room pretty well, so I know there's not overwhelming support for committees. I am still concerned about a very long to-do list, a very long backlog of projects we've started and never finished. And it's a long list, and part of it was there when you were here the first time, and I still hadn't been done. We can't do our business in 2 meetings a month. So if we can't do it in 2 meetings a month, and we don't want committees, we need to have occasional workshops all day, and we got to roll up our sleeves and we got to get some work done. I'm going to try to make a list of everything we've said in the last 10 years we were going to do. And most of it would still stay on there because we never quite tie the ribbon on.
That'd be like suicide.
Well, I have to add though, because I mean, finance, I understand you're passionate about that, but I do have to give kudos to that. I mean, there's an RFP out there to get some software updated on that. That's something that's been talked about for years and it's finally rolling, so I think there are steps. We may be crawling at a snail's pace, but I think we're going in the right direction.
Is there,
Mr. Robbins?
Maybe just move this forward in September, to maybe vote on maybe committees, and then we wouldn't, we gotta get through budget, we'll get through budget, at least get the ball started in September if we want to do it. So after budget, we can jump into it, otherwise, you're in the first of the year and
tonight.
Back making goals again that we want to accomplish.
Tonight,
27.
tonight's discussion only. Tonight's discussion only. My goal was if there is consensus here that we can bring something back in September to discuss, but I'm hearing not anything.
I'm not bringing it back.
Okay.
I say we move it to September.
And I agree that the smaller committees didn't work. I could support every month or every other month having a work session. And that's where we work on it. We all work on it together. So we come to a consensus and we're not having to do it all over again. We're not having to do it twice.
I can come back in September with some dates if we wanted to schedule at least one between now and the end of the year. A longer work session, a committee of the whole style session. After budget.
Thoughts?
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
All right, well,
I would just say after the works, or after our strategy session. Right?
After budget.
Well, after budget, and we're still looking through those RFPs for.
We'll be hearing from strategic plan.
For strategic.
Are those two proposals, we'll be hearing from both of them.
Because I see this as a part of that. I see that discussion really opening up.
There might be recommendations from them.
Yeah, as opposed to putting on our agenda in September and then having a strategic planning session where it just rehashes everything again. So, and I will say that we do have a final document on the ethics committee.
We do.
And it's gone through legal. But I think we just need to meet one more time.
It was sent by email. I'll send it again, so it's at the top of your inbox.
Just to kind of give it the once over, and then it'll be whatever we want to do here. I mean, we may have to start from scratch again, as we said. But anyways, I think everyone on the committee is going to be pretty comfortable with it, and the process, because we really did got into the weeds with it.
all right, well, I appreciate everybody's feedback on that, and we'll have something for September, something to look at, or a structure at least, so. With that, we'll move on to review of financials. Any questions on financials? Seeing none, special reports? Seeing none, final public comment. You have 5 minutes. Robert?
Michael Ari, Elmwood Township. Commissioners, you have a hard job. You take it on the jobs all the time. But it's your job. And your job has criticisms. And it gets hard at times. It's about as bad as being a contractor. You get beat up and then you're in the trenches. You have disagreements. You have public comment that becomes a little bit too harsh at times. You get wrapped up into it, you get involved. We need to move forward. You have an opportunity to have a lot of transparency and to change the optics of the way the public looks at you. One of the best things that I got on one of the meetings, because the leasing was, gee, we shouldn't be leasing vehicles. And then Commissioner Walters says, well, you know, this is a thing with it. And when financially it looks kind of bad, you know, to the public, because you're looking down on it, because your public in this situation, most of the public are pretty smart people and they've been down this road. But Mr. Walters says, well, the problem is these leasing companies suck up all the, you know, police car vehicles and we can't get it. Bingo, there's your answer. That's the reason you did it. Being more transparent and just forthright like that stops a lot of the questioning and the micromanaging. The micromanaging of your actions has gotten right out of control. And there's a reason, you know, that people are engaged and they don't feel like they have a voice on the national stage and even on the state stage. The Democrats, they feel disjointed from the state. The Republicans do too. So you have people in this county that are more engaged in the local politics and what you're doing, and you can't move because they're watching. So you feel micromanaged. The same thing with some of the employees here. They feel micromanaged because people are watching them. And so you need to respect that. And at the end of the day, when the public comments coming at you and it gets a little brutal, you have to remember one thing: be nice. That was one thing that I learned from a guy that was so salty And in private, he would rip me up one side, down the other. But when it come to the public, he said, handle it nice, be nice. Because that way you get respect. And you need to respect the public that's paying for you. And you need to respect each other. And stop trying to undermine and do things. I disagree with Mrs. Eilgeier. We can have a conversation on the phone. She will tell me I'm wrong about as much as my wife does. But that does not mean we disagree on an issue. But that doesn't mean that you cannibalize each other. We need to stop that. Mr. Wessel, we disagree on affordable housing. It's a topic. We can talk about affordable housing and TIFs and all that stuff. We may have a total different thing. He thinks I fell down and got brain damage, but we disagree, but we still get along. It doesn't matter. You have an opportunity here to move this county forward. You're questioning your finance director because of the audits and she wants more stuff. You should be grateful about that because the information is just king and she wants to be thorough. So having somebody to move your county forward and to set it in a new path, that's your mission. You have an opportunity right now to be the board that went, oh, that Ted is dead. And we're moving this county technologically forward and advanced. You're a rich county compared to other counties. So you should be introducing the public, into a higher level and getting along. Going through all of the programs that you're talking about, the past log, absolutely. But the administrator, do them a favor, organize the stuff to where you only have one item. You're dealing with policies and that. So that day you're dealing with that type of policies because their brain's gonna hurt. We need to save Leelanau County, preserve Leelanau County, and keep Leelanau, Leelanau. Because your neighbor is gonna be pulling you out of the snowbank the next so many months. And you don't want to be nice to them. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Kelsey?
Good evening. We agree pretty well with Mr. Ori. I'll begin with a famous quote by a person that is no longer with us. That quote was, "Most of the energy of political work is devoted to correcting the effects of mismanagement of government or mismanagement of government people." And I think Milton Friedman said that, and I think that's quite true. I appreciate Commissioner Yoder's statements about going forward and doing things. But we have to be careful because by that, we want to perhaps ignore or say that May 11th, 2021 did not exist. It did not happen. The clerk loathing motion did not happen. The clerk bashing since then did not happen. And I think that's why it's important for this commission to prepare that apology resolution that puts everything behind you by all of you. You must remember that 3 commissioners publicly apologized for that fiasco. Commissioner Sudas Little, Mrs. Elgeier, Commissioner Elgeier, and Mr. Robbins. They publicly apologize for that. And we need to do that as a whole body and say we're putting that all to rest because harm has been done. Damage has been done. taxpayers have seen lots of money wasted. And we're saying perhaps that none of this happened and we're going to go forward. That cannot be. The people here, as Mr. Ulrich said, are aware of things going on. And you have to make them believe that something did happen that perhaps commissions in the past were responsible for, and that apology is necessary. So we hope that we do not just blink our eyes. If we don't like something, we'll get rid of it. If we don't like a person we want to get rid of. We have to avoid that whole process, and Mr. Ulrich has laid out some good positive language to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Evening. My name is Mickey Eater. I live in Empire Township. And wanted to make a comment about culture, because that seems to be what we witnessed this evening in some ways. If we understand culture as a set of beliefs and behaviors that we all share, today you exercised differences of opinion. And one of those was that you have to figure out how to end a debate and end a discussion so you can move on to something else. And I encourage you, as you go into your strategic planning process, to think a little bit about that. There's a lot that you could be doing that's been on the back burner for the last few months. I sit on the Department of Health and Human Services Committee. I represent the county. I can tell you that the other members of Leelanau County who serve on that committee would like an opportunity to come and speak to you and tell you about what's happening. A few months ago, there was a discussion of an RFP and how to expend opioid funds. And I hope that that will get moved from the back burner back onto the front burner. It relates to health and human services activities. It relates to the health and well-being of the people in this county. And so I encourage you to not just think about structures when you're thinking about how do we deal with the culture and how do we become productively contributing to the welfare. How do we develop a culture that allows us to contribute productively as a government organization serving its citizens? So I thank you for your attention. I encourage you to think about the role of behavior and how you decide to interact with each other, and think about it intentionally. There was a discussion about talking to the auditors. Talk to each other. Make sure that you're on the same page. And that when you say we should be treated with respect, we know what the word respect means and what our expectations are. So I think it's a great county. We're delighted to be living here, and hope that we can continue to support your efforts in making this a good place to live. So thank you for your attention.
Any other public comment? Mr. Barman?
Josh Barman, Elmwood Township. A lot of the times that I come to these meetings, I sit in the back, and unless there's something objectionable, not in the back, but I sit somewhere, and unless there's something objectionable, I don't get up here and make public comment. Because I want the opportunity to let my voice and how smart I am, and to have a contrary notion to perhaps something I disagree with. I'm just a person that lives in this county. I love this county, and I want to be a part of the process. And I think some of us get lost in the critique of you all because we don't get to see everything. I'm not behind the closed doors. I'm not in all the meetings. I don't have all of your breadth of experience. And so I wanted to say two things today. My first thing would be to the public. Public, when we are making public, I'm speaking to you because I'm looking at you guys, but to the public, when you are making public comment to your commissioners, your words are being heard by more than just the people in this room. They're being reported on. They are posted on social media. They're being broadcast. We need to be careful about how we communicate and think about what our goals are. If it's that we infight and get nothing done, then keep posting the same sort of things that I've been seeing on social media. If we are hoping to move the ball forward, my recommendation for the public is that think about your goal being that this county works as a cohesive unit to move the ball forward. We're paying for it anyway, so why not get something out of our taxpayer dollars? So that's my comment toward the public. My comment to you all is just thank you very much for your work. You hear lots of criticism all the time, and I just want to come here today and say, even the commissioners I don't agree with on everything, thank you guys very much for showing up, doing your job, the staff that are behind the scenes too, doing your job. Thank you very much for continuing to do that. And yeah, we really appreciate it. That's all I got.
A real quick one. Yeah. Good evening, commissioners. I just want to say, Chairman Yoder, what you said tonight, I thought was just perfect. The way you spoke to everybody, your intention made me feel again that government does work for us and does a good job. And what you said to all the commissioners and the people in this room just really touched my heart. And I know you're going to do a great job going forward as well. Goodbye.
Mr. Weiser, you had your hand up.
Bill Wiesner, Elmwood Township. Again, the only way to have no fraud is to have one person, one ballot, one vote, one day. And a lot of the talks that people brought up tonight, we need to get down to the basics. We need to be civil with each other. We need to get along. We need to work together. None of that's going to happen well if we don't clear up the elections. And that's what I talk about every time because that's the most important item. And this handout was 19 days ago, July 31st, Emerald Robinson interviewing Patrick Byrne. He was under a court order for about 3 years not to share on this topic. And I shared that last week. And he was ordered by a judge who used to work for, not Gaddafi, but Maduro in Venezuela. She used to be his lawyer. So you see a conflict of interest there. I covered the first 6 pages, I at least breezed over it last time. This is divided into a transcript, and there's 3 pages of AI analysis at the end. And he kindly posted it last week, and I've updated it some, and hopefully he'll repost it again this week, and then I'll email them out to y'all. But from page 6 on, going back to Eric Coomer, writing this Goran Obradovic, he said they come in and we can expect to load it to win EDS. And in other words, when the votes come in, quote, air quotes, when the votes come in, it's not really the votes, it's what they've got arranged to upload instead of the votes. And Patrick Byrne speaking here about Goran Orovic, or I forget his last name. You can read it on the handout. He's the head of the development in Serbia. Why are we having our elections being developed in Serbia? He's the chief technologist. The Denver company where Dominion is located, and now Liberty, I suppose, is just a front. You ask any question to the people there under oath, and they basically all say, oh no, you got to go to the folks in Serbia to ask that question, to get that answer. His name's Goran Oradovic, and he's emailing Eric Coomer this communication saying that we're talking about the EDS system, this WIN EDS, but yet they've denied it over and over that they even have that. You're pushing this off on Venezuelans and Serbians. But then you have these people like Eric Coomer and Polos in America, and they say it's really a front, and they have to do it overseas. He figures, well, I'm gonna have to speed up here. Now it's called Liberty Vote. By the way, the new head of Liberty Vote was on a conference call with at least 200, it might have been 400, but in my memory it was 200, all people who were basically against Trump. And he was on that conference call the day of the election in 2020, November 3rd. And what was he doing there? And we're supposed to trust him now. And what this Ed Rojos, he's from Venezuela again, and he worked for Dominion, and now he's working for Liberty. And he's working in a red county in California. Why would they be in a red county? Wouldn't they want to be in the blue ones? But no, what they do, according to Patrick Byrne, they shave votes from the red counties. And that's what happened in Antrim County. Usually they shave 70 to 60, you know, they'll make it 70, 60 to their advantage. In Antrim, they tried 70 to 40 and got caught. There's a whole lot in here. I'm running out of time. I encourage you to look at it. And again, I'll go back to what I said when I voted in Elmwood Township. And there, now watch the vote. Here it is. Watch it. You're going to put it in there, sliding in there, just like magic. It went up one number. But I have no idea exactly what's going on in the vote, especially with these Serbians are saying what's happening, and they denied it and got Trump arrested and lots of other people arrested because they said, no, we're not online, but they actually were. So please read this. I'll be getting it emailed to you and others. Thank you very much. And this is a solution. We can count this way.
Any other public comment?
Just real quickly, I'm Gary Cosette. I live in Empire Township. And first thing I want to do is thank you for your work as a commission. You know, I follow you most closely through the Leelanau Enterprise that covers these meetings and developments at the county level. And then our commissioner is Gwen. So we hear from Gwen about how things are developing. And I just want to say how grateful I am to each of you. It's a huge time commitment, just hearing about trying to figure out if you're going to have more time commitments to solve some of these problems that have stacked up over time. You know, I just really appreciate and respect what you guys do. Two other quick comments. One, I want to thank you for your attention to clean energy and promoting, figuring out how this county can advance clean energy in the county. And then the second thing is, I'm so glad that you're looking at affordable housing and how to advance that in the county, because, you know, teachers, nurses, my spouse is a nurse, healthcare workers, we have all the service industry around here. How are people going to afford to live here and carry out all that if we don't have affordable housing? So looking at how to make that happen. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other public comment? All right, seeing none. Commissioner comments?
You know, just hearing about, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't put my hand.
Go ahead, Commissioner Wilson.
I want to thank Rio and Jen and Lauren and the treasurer for giving us something to do for the rest of the week. Thanks for preparing the budget books. I can't wait to read them.
Austin has put in a lot of hours. Yes.
I'm not sure I'm going to carry it to the car though.
When are you planning to hand them out?
They're right here.
On the way. All right, Commissioner Algar, go ahead.
You know, I thank you for the housing support. When that comes up, we have a 24-year-old granddaughter who lives with us. because her mother had a heart attack and they both took us. She works in a vet clinic. She's about to go into a program to get licensed, not as a vet, but as a tech. But you know what? There's no way she would be able to live in this county when she's done. And that's a tough reality. We love having people living upstairs. It's what families used to do. But wouldn't it be nice if we lived in a county where our kids could raise their own children here? And they could have their children in our schools. And I'm very, very glad that we're taking steps in that direction. And we have hardworking citizens who are daring and working really hard to make as much of that happen as possible.
Campbell?
I just want to thank Lauren and folks from the Poor Barn for moving that along. I think we all got that, email. It's gonna be a little bit more involved than just a lease. It's gonna involve a policy change. But I just want to express my support for doing that because I think that we as a county cannot afford and probably have no desire to get into the detail that these folks are and the services these folks are providing to the public. And they put a lot of money in, they put a lot of sweat in, and I'm just glad to see that going forward. They deserve everything we can do for them, in my opinion. So thank you.
Yes, yes.
Any other commissioner comments? All right, just a reminder, we got our budget meeting this Friday. We got, if you saw the agenda, we got our 2 presentations from our 2 strategic planning individuals. So hopefully they come prepared for questions. Hopefully they'll have a presentation and be exciting. But I also would be remiss if I didn't invite everybody to the Poker Fest next weekend. So that's a popular event in the county. So hopefully I see a couple of you there. So with that, we'll move on to approval of financials. Mr. Bunny.
Yeah, I move to approve the fund transfers of 2020, number 26004.
Support. Supported. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carried 7-0. Mr. Bunny.
I move to approve the amendment number 26003.
Supported. Discussion. Not. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carried 7-0. Mr. Bunny.
Move to approve claims and accounts for $654,653.33.
Support. Supported. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carried 7-0.
And move to approve post audit $2,765,436.76.
Supported. All those in favor of that motion say aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carried 7-0. That adjourned.